Welcome back to the Mindsets Podcast. This is episode 7. Today I'm joined by Jasmine, who is going to do her own introduction because I'm not going to do that. It's your own introduction. So also, first and foremost, welcome to the Mindsets Podcast studio. This is the first time we're recording in it. It's still very basic. If you guys could see what's behind the camera right now, you'd be laughing a lot. But ultimately, there will be some things added. It will get jazzed up, so you get to enjoy that in each episode as it grows along.
No pun intended.
Absolutely not. That was, yeah, wow. I'm glad you're on it today. So yeah, feel free, introduce yourself, and we can go from there.
Well, thank you for having me. I think what you're doing is really cool. Like such an amazing concept. Yeah, Jasmine. I guess I would say I'm a 400-meter hurdler first. That's my athletics is my big thing. And I do social media marketing for my job. 25 years old. I feel we were just saying how we feel old, but yeah, I'm 25 and living in London, loving life. Yeah.
Cool. I mean, this is something that's also worth mentioning. You briefly mentioned your job there, and I briefly mentioned that this is my studio. Tell us about your job and what you do.
Yeah, so I started it actually only 3 months ago, which is crazy because that time has just flown. But yeah, it feels like I've been there much longer than 3 months. I started. Yeah, it's in Oval. Our office is like really cool. We have a set up studio. It's a bit different to this, but that's because it's the Good, the Bad and the Rugby podcast with Mike, James and Alex. They're great, and I also work for the Scaz, the Rugby, so that's the women's podcast as well, and the women's rugby podcast. They're so much fun. We're getting more into that season 4 now, which is crazy. Wow. Cool. But yeah, so I listen into the podcasts. I then do kind of timestamps when I work out, which is like something that they say is going to be go crazy on socials, and then I take that content, cut it down, edit it, and post it on our social media, which I think now we've got on Instagram 150k followers, so it's quite a big deal.
Yeah. It's got that,
so it's really hard to. Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah,
I don't want to fuck up. Don't want to post anything that's that sometimes I have, and like being new in the job, it's hard. I'm not like from a general rugby background. My dad does he's a coach, rugby coach, so that's kind of where my love for rugby has come from. But I've had to learn a lot about rugby and all the rules, which even for rugby players themselves, they're finding it hard to work out. Like there's so many new rules. But yeah, it's amazing. I love my job, and it's before that it was quite tough. I was actually made redundant back in April, and I was working in recruitment, which is quite I don't want to offend anyone here, but I think it's well known to be quite a toxic culture, to be honest. Okay. I did like the company that I worked for, but yes, the people are very competitive, and normally I do thrive in that kind of environment, but for someone who's not actually a recruiter themselves, so I was doing their marketing, it was quite tough because I'm not going to go into too much detail because I really don't want to offend anyone.
No, of course.
But it was a tough gig, and there were some really cool things that we were doing, some really cool concepts, and we were working in HR and tech. But yeah, I actually had my own podcast there, so that was cool. But yeah,
Is that kind of why you made the transition into now working more on a podcast?
Yeah, I think so. Because I had my own experience, I know what it's like to, record, edit, also get in the guests, and make it engaging content. But yeah, it's very different going from HR and tech to rugby. It's a completely different contrast, but I always wanted to end up in sport. But yeah, sorry, completely sidetracked. I was made redundant in April, which was really tough. I think the company knew that they were going to be reducing their headcount and fortunately run out of budget a bit. And then I was in Tenerife on warm weather training with my group.
Is that when you found out?
And I found out loads of people were getting made redundant. And I thought, well, not me, because the last conversation I'd had with my manager was that I was doing really well and that everything was, going well. And it was really tough because we literally had just landed. The plane landed in Tenerife. And one of my best friends, my colleague at the time, called me as I'd landed. She was like, Jazz, pick up. I need to call you now. Called me, and I thought, just another work drama. Just something someone said and she's got a bit upset about. And she went, Jazz, I've been made redundant, crying down the phone. I don't know what's going on, but so many people have been called in. And she was one of the first ones to be made redundant, which was really hard to hear down the phone when you want to be with someone to help them. And the first thought I thought of was, oh my gosh, I don't know how I can work without her, because we were a little duo and she was in the marketing team as well. Then my whole week of being out in Tenerife, you want to enjoy it. You want to train as hard as you can.
I was going to say, this isn't just a holiday, is it? You're training as well. So you're kind of in three different places there. You're away from home in a lovely place where it's nice and warm. You're also trying your hardest to make the most of the training while you're out there. And then this is going on and you're... Okay.
It was really hard to figure out in my brain, because one part of me was going, oh no, you'll be absolutely fine. Like, they need you for this, for the podcast. They need you to do all the social media. And I was doing quite a lot of different types of marketing, loads of digital marketing. I was also editing the website. I was running all the social channels and then podcast on top. So, and then video editing and graphic design, etc. So I was thinking, no, I'll be safe, I'll be okay. And then the other part of me was going, oh my gosh, when you come back from this, you're not going to have a job. When living in London at the moment, and in general, is so hard. The rent has shot up. Everyone I know is paying around £1,000 to be living in London.
Before bills a lot of the time as well, which is insane, especially in like winter now. Like, bills haven't dropped down that much. It's like it's an expensive place to be. Yeah. For sure.
So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, when you come back from this trip, you're not going to have a job. You're then going to have to afford to be living in London without any income, and then you'll just be a full-time athlete, which is, I mean, I'm not going to put myself down. I'm obviously a good athlete, but I'm not good enough to be full-time. Like, that's not where I was at. So the whole week was really hard. It was a really enjoyable trip, but there were a lot of times when I was having to just kind of keep in my head that try and stay motivated to train whilst knowing, So as soon as I came back, I actually got a text on the Sunday night, the night before I was meant to go in on the Monday, saying, check your emails. So I did. Jasmine, we don't require you to come into the office tomorrow morning. We will have a call with you at 9:00. That's when you know, isn't it? Right. You just know. So my heart sank, and that was back in April. So I had May, June, July, August. I don't know where those months went, because most of the time I was applying for new jobs, and I kind of saw it as a really exciting prospect. I thought, okay, this is something that I can grasp, and I can make a good thing out of a bad situation, and I can get a really cool job from now on, and I've got so much experience and I know what I want.
Did you immediately feel like that though?
No.
Because I was going to say, like, no. You've got this call on the Monday morning. How long does it take for you mentally to switch from my life has fallen apart? I'm the lower end of my career in terms of how many years I'm going to be working for. I'm living in the most expensive place in the UK. How do you switch from that to then being like, okay, this could be an opportunity? How long does that take?
Well, it's definitely, I feel like in my mind I was switching all the time between staying positive and being negative. Like, there wasn't really a point where I knew I was going to be okay until I'll move on to that, but until I got my new job, first thing was massive relief because I was let free in a way, and then about an hour later I was crying in bed, and then about an hour later I saw my friend. She came over, bless her, amazing friend, my colleague, who knew exactly what the feeling was like. She went through it the week before, and we sat down, we had dinner together, and we were like, it's going to be okay, we'll be all right. And then the day after, I pretty much spent my whole day in bed, which is not like me at all. There's not one day, I don't think, in this whole, unless I'm very ill, in my whole life, I was spent in bed. So that was, it was quite a dark day. And then I gave myself a week to pick myself back up, and then start applying for jobs again. And to be honest, the support I got from my company was not great. And I was seeing a therapist, which was through work. They cut that off straight away. They cut off the therapy. I had the app called Calm, which I was using all the time to get to sleep, to calm myself down.
Was that through like a work login?
Through
as well?
work.
Amazing.
Cut it off straight away. Logged me out of everything within the hour of being told being let go. So yeah, support was dire, wasn't great. And I got a few messages from people at work, but it was kind of crazy. It was a crazy time, and it's now gone in such a whirlwind. And I feel like those few months I was just really focusing on my training, but that's the thing, is when you're then a full-time athlete, you really feel like this is it. You have to focus on that and that only, and then you put so much pressure on yourself to perform in training, in competitions, races, that for me, I feel like this season was really hard. I put so much pressure on myself because I was like, well, I don't have a job. Like, I have no excuse. There's no excuse to not do well.
Well, let's set the scene a little bit for everyone listening. So
for sure.
You're talking about your sort of background as an athlete.
Yes.
Let's go back to when there was less pressure.
Okay.
When you're a lot younger.
Mm-hmm.
Was running the first thing you ever did?
I think so.
Because there's a bit of pedigree there, am I right? You've got your mum is, I don't know about, and both sides of the family, is it?
Yeah, so my grandma she was an incredible javelin thrower.
Wow, that's quite niche, yeah.
Yeah, so she then got my mum into athletics, and my mum from a young age would take herself to training, and she was incredible. From when she was 18, she was running the sort of times I was running now, even faster than that actually. And yeah, everything she does, I've always wanted to be her, basically. I've always wanted to follow my mum's footsteps. So and then my dad also, my parents met at the athletics track. A really funny story.
Nice, yeah.
My mum was, I don't know what she was doing. I think she was doing some sort of handstand walks across the track, and my dad went, "Yep, she's the one for me," which is hilarious. So yeah, they met at the athletics track, and then from, I guess, when I was born, they knew that I would be following in their footsteps. But yeah, you are kind of right. Like, there wasn't much pressure for me at the beginning. They just wanted me to enjoy. I was actually quite a good footballer. When I was like a kid, I was the only girl in the whole league. I played with boys from when I was like 6 years old. So I love my football, and they didn't want to put too much pressure on me doing athletics. But then I made the decision to stop the football, stop anything else I was doing, hockey, gymnastics, and school sports, to be like, right, I am going to focus on athletics because I know I've got speed. I know that I enjoy it.
Did you come to that decision yourself, or was it kind of guided by parents and also friends, or you just woke up one day and were just like, this is the one?
I think I made the decision myself. I was kind of 15, 16, and I went, do you know what? There were a few things. I think football was getting I was getting a lot of injuries in football, and it goes to the point where it was more for fun rather than something that I could take on as a career. I mean, who knows? So much respect to the Lionesses. Like, I would have loved to do that and be a professional footballer, but it's a bit more of a risk than doing athletics.
There is certainly more of an element of the unknown, because I mean, a tackle could come off bad for both people involved, and sometimes you don't know where it's going to come from. Whereas you think about running, yes, you still have injuries that do occur and you can't necessarily plan for them, but it's less likely that someone else is going to cause an injury.
Yeah, exactly. So and then I came to that decision, and I just went from there, then joined my local club at home, trained twice a week. So
were you already doing hurdles by that point? Or were you,
I started hurdling. I was doing sprint hurdles and then went on to 300 metre hurdles, because at that age you don't do 400. And then I made it to English schools, my first English schools, when I was 17. And that was just, it was so funny, because now I go to British champs every year. I kind of make the time for British champs, but when you're that age, you think English schools is the biggest thing ever, and you get so nervous, and I really didn't perform well at both the English schools I went to. I didn't do great, but it's okay, because it was such a learning process, and it made me really want to then push on, and then from uni, so that's a big jump from being a kid, but
go for it.
So from when I was 18, I then went to Loughborough.
Great university of choice. Fantastic.
Arts the last. But yeah, basically I kind of focused on athletics majorly from then, and I was in a really cool group with some insane athletes, and it felt surreal. I was training alongside like the best athletes in the country, of course, and you kind of feel a bit out of your depth, but it was an incredible experience. And then I think when I really thought, okay, things are going really well in my athletics career, I came fourth at Bucks, which I was gutted that I didn't come third, but to be honest, I was really happy with that, because Bucks is a big thing, and it's not just like rugby, football. You have Bucks competitions, you have that every weekend. For athletics, Bucks is just indoors and outdoors. We only have 2 opportunities to shine.
And in terms of, I know I'm really bad at the second half of Bucks, but Bucks is British University
Championship. I can't remember now.
Yeah, I can't remember. All I know is that pretty much every university is involved in the Bucks competition.
Yeah.
So like you're talking about on an athletics track. I don't know if this is the same for indoors and outdoors. Is it still 8 lanes?
No.
It's not.
No.
Okay, well there we go.
No.
But like you obviously there's heats and that sort of thing that you have, but ultimately there's way more universities than there are people competing.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to get to that point in the first place, you've already achieved so much.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, you get 1 or 2 opportunities in a season to really.
And also, with Loughborough, I think it might just be Loughborough. I could be wrong. It could be Bath and Birmingham as well. I'm not too sure. But all universities say if you want to compete in bucks, if you are doing that event, go for it. Loughborough have a set time that you have to make bucks. So you have to perform before bucks. We have bucks trials before that. Yeah, not like any other uni. It's so
Where it's
funny.
Like, oh, you want to do that? Sign up. Yeah, go for it.
So funny speaking to my friend who went to Exeter. She was like, you had to make a time to get to bucks. Like, that's crazy. It should just be an open competition. But no, Loughborough's so competitive. And people warned me of that before I went. I actually had some people being like, well, you won't make it to bucks because you have to get a time for that. Like, you do realise that, right? So to even be there, yeah, as you said, is an insane opportunity. So yeah, to come fourth was, and that year as well, I hate to say it because my friend Anna fell at the last hurdle and it was very dramatic, and I hope she's got over that now, but I was the only Loughborough 400 women 400 meter hurdler that actually finished that year.
Oh wow. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Making these hurdles sound like terrifying things as well.
Crazy. They just come out of nowhere. But yeah, so that was a big achievement for me. And then that's when I went on that year as well. I came fourth at the under 23 nationals, and got my personal best PB for everyone who is an athlete and knows what a PB means. And that actually from that year was my favorite, best year, 2019, and I haven't PB'd since then. I've got so close, genuinely like tenths of a second. So I guess I class it as like an equal PB, but that was my best year, and I'm still going on now. And it's so funny speaking to people who have a full-time job like me, and they kind of find out about athletics or they hear it through grapevine. They're like, what, you're still competing now? It's like a crazy thing.
I think that's the thing. It's because so many people, and I mean this is true with my friends, you think back to school, everyone, they do whatever sport it is in PE at school, and then they sometimes do it in sixth form, and then when they get to university it's another opportunity to start a sport. So you go to university, and those that don't go to university at that point, they might still be playing at the weekend at their local Sunday side club if it's football, or equivalent for rugby, and so on. But generally speaking, when you finish an organised sport opportunity, most people stop. And so when you get into the workplace and you start talking to people and, you know, someone competes, it is really, really rare.
Yeah.
Because again, and this is probably something we'll end up talking about, it's very difficult to balance a full working life and a full training life attempting to get PBs. And I think what you were saying in terms of 2019 being your best year, do you think momentum maybe there was an impact on momentum because of COVID in the way you trained? Because there's one thing as well. I'm bringing loads of things into this, so we'll have to stir the mixing pot and come out with one thing to carry on with. Yeah. But I remember seeing you training on one of the pitches quite regularly at Loughborough. Yeah. And a lot of it is mechanics based as well. And I think there will be a lot of athletes that are listening, and some new people to fitness or whatever. 90% sure that most of you don't know how to run correctly. And it is insane to me, and I can fully vouch for the fact that I thought, you know, I was never a sprinter, but I was never slow. And then I discovered how to run, and the fact that it's just not taught is insane, and spent ages learning how to run. And in comparison, you watch someone on TV that can run, they look like they're gliding. Yes. And it looks so easy. And then you look at someone that can't run, and it's all out of time, it's all out of sync, and it looks like it's so much effort. In reality, the person who's gliding, the amount of work they're putting in to contract all the muscles and time everything up is still going on. It's just more muscle memory. So you can't just learn it at the beginning and then switch it off and continue competing, and that's just how you run. So you we're doing a lot of mechanics-based sessions, and then a lot of actual. I mean, what's the training like when you were around that sort of time?
That time, well, I actually was in two different groups at Loughborough. I was with Nick Dakin's group, which was like incredible. We were training a lot. We would train every day apart from Friday, which, I mean, that's what I do now, but the stuff we were doing then was very intense. And I think because we had that high pack, the indoor centre, which is incredible, it just meant that we could train whenever we could. So Mondays would be very technical hurdle sessions, and then we'd have circuits as a group. And then Tuesdays was like heavy track session. Wednesdays would be a run and then gym. And then Thursdays would be more of a technical track session. And then Fridays off, if you're lucky. And then Saturday mornings we would do horrible sessions. We did these fartlek sessions on the Holywell pitches, and you'd have to there'd be hills incorporated in it as well, so you'd have to kind of as people know what fartlek is, but it's kind of you up the pace, you then drop off, you slow down, and then up the pace again.
Do you have a rest in fartlek, or is it just a case of managing your tempo?
I think we had some parts where we were able to have a walk back recovery, but not a lot. Like it was normally jog sprint. So that was tough. And then Sundays would be run, gym, sometimes another track session. Like, so that was then. And to be honest, my training now, and then to go back, I then joined a different group. Alex Curry, lovely guy, great coach. He was my coach kind of throughout the COVID time, and he did things very differently. So we did a lot of grass sessions then. So that was, and also pushed from COVID, we kind of had to. There were only set elite athletes able to use the high pack, which was really tough. But we made the most of using the grass when we could, when we were allowed to train in groups, and use the 3G pitches. And that was, there were a lot of recovery sessions, let's say. He said they weren't. They were still very much training sessions. And he'd say, oh, you've got a 300 on... 300, 200 pyramid session, something like that on the grass. And he'd be like, oh, but this is a recovery because we're on the grass.
So it's easier on the joints. Right, okay.
No, it was still quite tough. But yeah, that was then. And then now I am training in Kingston with my group Momentum Sports, and we have a big group of us. Well, now we're a big group. There wasn't that many to start with. There was 2 hurdlers when I joined, and now there's about 5 or 6 of us.
And is it mixed, or is it just women, or? It's
mixed. So the group of us, there's kind of people who are just sprint based, so 100, 200s, and then from 18-year-olds, I think, until I think Nicole and Sam are 27, 28. So, and then we've got also masters guys in our group who are good. So it's super mixed. And then some of them are also 800 meter runners. So we're a big group of us, but we all kind of fit the training around each other, work off each other. And as I
say, there must be some level of bouncing off each other, because if there's someone that's used to doing shorter distances, they might have a completely different mindset on the pace that they want to go at.
Yeah.
And if you try and match that, it could push you, but you could also learn that you should not be doing that.
Yeah, exactly. So my coach is actually very, very clever. He's like, the way he plans our sessions is crazy. It's genuinely to the 10th of a second, and the recovery times as well. So if someone had, let's say, take my session on Tuesday, I had 500 meters, 2-minute break, 600 meters, 5-minute break, then another 500 meters, horrible. 5-minute break, 400, 300, 200, 150. But the way he does it, he works out who is also doing this session, so who kind of will join in. If we have the same recoveries, and he genuinely writes every single person's name down, which rep they're going to be on in comparison to another person, and how much recovery they will have as well. So someone might miss out a rep, and then you have to work out, well, he works out if we have the same recovery or not. So I might have to then cut my recovery a bit on one rep, and then it sounds confusing, and it is, but the way he does it is mad. He makes sure that everyone's involved, and we also have staggered starts sometimes. So if my target time is quicker than someone else's, they will start however many seconds before me, and then I can then catch up with them.
So the aim is that you can be competitive towards the end. See, that what you're saying is some of the coaching stuff that's going on there. I mean, it does sound like an elite level coach, because what I'll say is I think coaching comes in all different forms, and it's very obvious to tell when a coach themselves is passionate about it, because they have unique ways of bringing all different types of people together, and still achieve things. And I don't know why I've never even thought about that, but syncing people up so that you should, in theory, finish around the same time. Just because, you know, when you're getting towards the finish line or whatever, you're giving everything you've got. And if you think someone might be giving 10%, you'll try your best to find it. That's genius. I really like it.
It's very, very good. I mean, sometimes it can be annoying, because you want to start your session and then you have to wait for someone else to do a few reps before you then start. But it is very clever how he does it, and my group as well. I think because we're all so experienced, we've been training ourselves. We've been all kind of in the athletics realm since about 10 years old, competitively probably 12 years old. So we know how to pace ourselves. We're really good at pace judgment, and it's really good when we know what target time we have to then run at that pace, and know that the person in front of you is sticking to that, so that when you finish and you look at your watch, you're like, okay, great, I have hit my target. Sometimes it doesn't work perfectly, but it can't always, and it's mad how he works out our target times as well in comparison to our personal best times, our recent training, our training from this time last year, the comparison between what sessions we have. It sounds,
I mean, from an outside perspective, it sounds intense, but it sounds like in reality intense is what you need. My question is,
yes,
if it's this intense, and like you've got used to it now, so it might sound really intense to me. It may still seem intense to you, but to a lesser level than when you first started doing it, that kind of thing. If we look back to earlier this year, then when there was that rough period, I assume this was no less intense. I was talking to someone this week about this. Why? Why do you do it?
This was something that I think I've only worked out genuinely, like, very recently, and I think I needed that time period of just doing athletics to work out why. Because I think it just comes naturally from me, from within. Maybe my parents, and maybe it's my competitive nature, and maybe it's partially because I'm also very stubborn and I want to prove people wrong, and I want to prove people right about me, I guess, as well, and I want to prove myself, and I want to, there's so many elements. I could talk about this for ages, but I really like the feeling of pushing my body to the limit. Like, I it's horrible, but I love feeling like I'm gonna throw up from a session because I've worked so hard.
Do you? Because I get the same sort of feeling when I'm putting myself through my paces. I enjoy that element. However, I only get that sense of feeling when I've done it, and I know when I'm doing it why I'm doing it. I know at some point I'm going to be like, yeah, I'm so glad I did that. At the time, I don't know why I'm pushing myself to that extent. Afterwards, it's abundantly clear, and so that's ultimately what stays. But when you are pushing yourself and you're in that moment, you're doing the last rep, you're doing whatever it is in the last 20 meters. Are you enjoying it then? You are.
Yes, I think it depends on the session, but there's doubts in my mind when you're running further than your own distance. So when I do sessions where I'm like running over 400 meters, so when I'm doing 500, 600s, it is really hard to keep yourself mentally going. But yeah, I know in that moment, I know that I'm pushing myself hard enough that it's all going to be worth it. And then, yeah, I guess it is. I do get that sense of relief when you cross the line. You're like, oh, thank God I've done it. But there's not many times when I question it too much. We joke at our group. We joke a lot about why have we chosen this event, particularly 400 meter hurdles, probably arguably one of the hardest technical events, and also lactic and.
Well, I always remember from when I was trying to do sort of sprinting in school, 100 and 200. 100 was a lot better than 200 because it's over before you know it. You give everything you've got and then you give it a little bit more and you've crossed the line.
Yeah.
200, you're still giving everything you've got and you kind of fall over the line because you've burnt out everything. 400 is horrible. It's like the worst of both things because you have to pace yourself a little bit, but you have to give everything you've got. And I'm obviously not the person that can speak about the mentality of each of the stages as you go around, but then you also bring in things that you've got to jump over.
Yeah. I think it's a tough one because some people would say that they love the hurdles because then they know. I think I say this as well because they know where they're at in the race. I don't think many people know this if you're not an athlete, but you tend to go. If you're experienced enough, you will go into a 400 meter hurdles race knowing your stride pattern, knowing how many strides you want to do between the hurdles. You then also know how to make adjustments, right? So it's not going to go right every single time. I try and do 16 strides to hurdle 3 if I can, and then change to 17, and then let's not talk about sometimes at 19 it goes to, but if I'm really dead. But is
that in between each set of hurdles? Because you said by hurdle 3.
Yes.
So have you done 2 hurdles before that?
Yes.
Okay, so you've done 16 paces, including 2 hurdles. By the time you get to, was it 16? No, it was.
Yeah, 16.
It was 16 to the third, and then the next set of 3, you're looking at 17, but sometimes it goes to 19.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
It's crazy because people don't really think. They just kind of. I guess it's not really a thought process you have when you're not involved in the event, because you just see athletes just jumping over a hurdle like that. You don't think, oh, they're going to have to know how many strides they need in between this, or they're going to need to know which leg they're going to take off and land, and then for the next one, because when I think it's muscle memory. Your body knows what it's doing. You have time to think in that moment. You just have to go into the race knowing that your body knows what it's doing.
Yeah, and switching that off. But again, that probably comes with experience, right?
Yeah.
And in terms of experience, you obviously mentioned when you were younger and competing and you were at the UK schools.
Yeah, English schools, yeah.
Just absolutely bricking it.
My pants.
I mean, I can't imagine that you're not bricking it a little bit when you're competing now.
Mm.
But why are you not bricking it as much? Is it a pre-process? Or?
Oh my gosh, don't get me wrong. I get nervous for every single race, even if it's just a Southern League. Like every race I get nervous for, and I get so nervous that like I try so hard not to psych myself out of it. I'm like, oh, I can do this. I've done it so many hundreds of times. Of course I can do this. But you still get nervous. But it's a different kind of nervous in comparison to English schools, because then I was so naive. I didn't have as much experience. I was going into it very young. And now I know that no matter how nervous I get, what's the worst that can happen? No, there's one race that could go badly. People aren't going to remember it as much as you are. And I try not to think like that, because then I'm like giving myself an excuse to run badly. But it's just an experience situation. And the nerves are good. You need nerves, right, to be able to race well.
Well, I was always told as a kid. I used to do cross country when I was like really young, and my dad always used to take me to cross country, and he'd drop me off. And yeah, I used to be really, really nervous. And he always used to say, only good people get nervous, because the bad ones have nothing to be nervous for.
Yeah.
And in reality, the more nervous you are to a certain extent, the more likely mentally you should perform. In reality, nervousness can ruin that. But it's your brain's way of telling you you're about to do something pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's why you've got all this adrenaline and all the nerves and everything. So yeah, anytime I felt nervous, I've always been like, it's got to be for the right reason.
And you just have to channel and use it to your own advantage. If you're not nervous, you don't care enough. And that's what I say to myself. I feel like there are tough times when you do get so nervous the night before a race, and you psych yourself up so much for it that you can't sleep. That's when it will obviously hinder your performance. But yeah, I think I've kind of over the years I've managed really well to deal with that, and my sleep before a race sometimes now recently has tended to be like the best sleep of my life.
Really? That's really uncommon.
Yeah, really weird. But I don't know how, because before I would wake up every hour and worry so much about the worst things that could happen. But yeah, now I think I'm just a different athlete. I've got way more mentally stronger. I definitely have struggled in the past with I've struggled massively mentally.
As a result of performance or pressure or what sort of
all of that. I think 2020, so the year after my best year, and 2021, those 2 years, I would turn up to the track sometimes and tell myself I'm not running. I'd completely go into some weird state of mind where I felt like I wasn't good enough to be there. I didn't deserve to be there. And I wasn't going to make it over 10 hurdles. And I just thought, I don't think I can do this. And it's a scary place to be in, because when you've trained so hard for something and you don't think you can do it, it's really tough.
Have you figured out why you were saying that?
I think COVID maybe played a part to it. There was a point where, and I think as well, I did my master's dissertation and my undergrad dissertation on this, but body image plays a massive role. And I think those 2 years I was in a pretty toxic relationship, and I think I'd been like pushed so much to the point where I felt like I wasn't good enough for anything in life, and then that plays into your sport. And then I also struggled massively with my skin, so there were times where I didn't want to go out and see anyone. So there was a load of things going on with myself, body image, and just being told I wasn't good enough.
I think it's very difficult. Sport has always been a thing that has propped up, for so many people, has propped up. Well, all of that other stuff could be going on, as long as the sport's consistent and the productivity of working towards a goal and that sort of thing can kind of mentally keep you sane, because it's like, well, yes, other things go on, but at least I can appreciate that this is making me happy. I'm achieving this. I'm still good. But comes a point where that isn't good enough anymore, and everything outside of that ends up spilling over and pours into that, and ultimately starts impacting the way your relationship with training is.
Yeah, it was weird because like I was still training fine. It was just coming to competitions, I was comparing myself a lot to other people. I genuinely psyched myself out of it so much, to the point where I wasn't making the first hurdle right at all. Every single race I was coming up to the first hurdle, which now I'm coming up to it too fast and I need to chill out a bit. But I wasn't making it, and I'd go over the first hurdle with the wrong leg, and then that's the race over. Because once you've messed up, your whole race pattern's wrong, and that's how. Then it'd be lucky if I even started the race, to be honest. There were some times when I would get to a competition and I didn't want to do it, and I didn't do it, and it's so sad, because I think now it's a wasted opportunity. Like, you get this chance to do something incredible, and not many people can do this skill, and then you get there and you don't do it. What's the point of training so hard?
Yeah, at the same time, like I 100% see like that you'd be sat here now and you'd be thinking, is that as a missed opportunity? But at the same time, in terms of your personal progression, you got yourself out of that. And generally speaking, there isn't an athlete I know that at some point in their athletic career or whatever that hasn't had that.
Yeah.
It just comes at different points. And for you to have had it then, you might be looking back now and be like, oh, that was not the most ideal time to have it. But you never know. And you got yourself out of it.
Mm-hmm.
How?
I think I changed groups training, which was a big thing. And then I had a lot more coach support. Dakin was an incredible coach, so I'm not going to put him down at all. Like, people have got to the Olympics through his coaching, but I think for me, I needed more support mentally and just in general. Like, I don't know how to put this. I'm a needy person, and
do you need a coach that needs to know you and talk to you, not just the athlete inside you?
Yeah, like the emotional support, and I didn't get that from him. So then I changed groups, and then things went up from there. I also got myself out of a relationship that wasn't good for me. I quickly got into another one, but he was an athlete himself, so I kind of worked off him. There was a lot of coaching from him as well, which was cool.
But I assume you also had the emotional support as well.
Yeah, exactly. So we both knew what it was like to be an athlete. I don't know how I got out of it. I think it's just something that if you want to carry on and if you want to push yourself.
Did you ever question giving up? Completely? Like, just stopping athletics? It's not for you anymore?
I think I did. But then I quickly realised that wasn't an option for me because it's genuinely in my blood. Like, I wake up every day and I think, oh my gosh, what training session do I have today? So I think this sounds so like up myself, and I don't mean to be like this, don't take offense to this, please, but I struggle to understand people that come back from work and then don't want to do anything with their lives.
See, this is a huge point. Hello friends, apologies for the interruption to the podcast. I just wanted to extend my thanks and appreciation for some of the messages I've received recently regarding some of the topics in the podcasts, but also the support that I received from Movember. It really does mean a lot, and I just wanted to squeeze that in here. Anyway, back to it. So, big point.
Yeah.
I want to discuss this because I think this is... I think in my head I've come up with it as being elasticity.
Oh, okay.
And in mental elasticity in terms of how far you stretch yourself.
Right.
Now, I am in a similar way of thinking. I get home from work and my brain switches off work, but rather than just switching off, I switch on to something else.
Yes.
If I'm training after work, then it switches on to training. If I am doing something to do with this, then I'm doing something to do with this. And it doesn't really switch off unless I'm having a meal and then I can sort of switch it off, or I'm having a conversation with someone to sort of switch it off. But usually there is still something in the back of my head being like,
something whirring.
do something else, achieve something else, that sort of thing. It doesn't stop. And I think that is as a result of having had that for quite a long time. So
yes.
If I go back to when I was in secondary school, I was a slightly rounder kid. I still loved sport.
I love that phrase.
I didn't...
Rounder kid.
I was a rounder kid. I still loved sport. I didn't really train that much for it. I did whatever training session was put on, but I wouldn't train for anything outside that. I remember I would get home from school. I'm so hoping other people can relate to this. I'd get home from school. Parents wouldn't be home because they'd be working. I'd switch on the TV.
Yep.
Friends on E4. I'd go and have I can't remember. I feel like I was probably too young to have a cup of tea, but I'd have something like some sort of juice with some
milk
digestive
and cookies.
biscuits. Yeah, that sort of thing. I'd sit there and I would do nothing until my parents came home. Then I'd have dinner, and then I'd do my homework if I had any, and then I'd do nothing, and then I'd go to bed. And that was the way it was. And then some of the sports I got involved in started training multiple times a week. Yeah. And when that started happening, it became a little bit more serious. I was like, okay, well, I need to be a little bit fitter. So I started running. And then I started doing that. And then got into different sports, all sorts of things, got to uni. By that time, I'd kind of got myself into a workout routine anyway. But the exposure to more people doing more, and me being a somewhat competitive person, somewhat is a complete lie, a very competitive person, just started making me stretch the amount of things I did in the same amount of time. And all of a sudden, that becomes the new normal. So you go from having a day where as soon as school was done for me, I could switch off, that was it, day was done. I'd accomplished everything. And then you add a little bit more and that becomes the new normal. And then you add a little bit more and that becomes the new normal. Yeah. And then someone else does something, they're doing even more than you, and you think, well, there's got to be some way I can incorporate this. And you find a way. And now it's just a never-ending cycle of adding more and more and more. Mm-hmm. And you've got to be careful not to burn out, admittedly. Of course. But then you take a look back at I look back at myself and I'm like, what were you doing from the end of school till the time you went to bed? Like you were just sat watching a screen. And now I can't even imagine what I'd be doing if I had that time back. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's a thing in that state, your elasticity and desire to stretch, you're comfortable. Every time you add something, for a while it feels like you've added something, and then it becomes comfortable because you have stretched to that point. Yeah. And eventually, I mean, and this is where burnout happens, the elastic band can break, but you do keep stretching it and finding ways to do more and more and more. And so you're exactly right. Not understanding how people get home and do nothing is a completely rational thing, but at the same time, those people don't understand how you get home from work and you go and do something else.
Yeah. It's mad. As I say, I really don't mean to offend people, but I think my brain just doesn't work like that. I think I've got undiagnosed ADHD first of all, but I think I'm like just a hyper person. I come home, the next thing is on my to-do list. I've got to go to the gym. I've got to get a run in, or I will have done it before work. And then that means that I have time to maybe see a friend in the evening or do something else. Like, I will never not have a plan. The day I don't have a plan, I'm like, wow. I pat myself on the back. I'm like, okay, I can try and have a break. But my housemates are totally different. Like, they all keep fit, but none of them are athletes. So when I come back in the house at 9:45 at night after coming back from training, they're all in bed and the house is quiet, it's dark, and I'm then cooking until 10:15. I then have to, like, my routine and structure is like clockwork. I have to fit it all in, and I know I have to, but it does get very intense and hard sometimes. Like, there's not many days I don't have a day off, essentially. Like, even today is a Sunday. That's like the only time I have normally to myself, but I'll have.
And you went on a run?
Yes, I had a run this morning, and then I had hills, which I did as well, and then I went to the gym as well.
Great day off. Excellent day off.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what I was going to say is, as a person that now, I'm not doing an organised sport anymore. I stopped. And so I'm now pursuing and trying loads of different forms of fitness. It's partly related to this, but I'm trying to find things that I think are cool, are new, could be the next venture, but at the same time just trying to find ways to push myself in different areas and become more of an all-round athlete rather than training specifically for one thing. My current routine is I will go to the gym before work on a Monday and a Tuesday. Wednesday, if I'm working from home, I'll go on some sort of longer distance run, relatively chilled. And then Thursday and Friday, again, gym before work. Friday's a bit more focused on recovery, because by that point in the week, everything's screaming at me internally, like with my body. And then at the weekend, sometimes on Saturdays now is when I'm trying the new thing.
Yeah.
And then on a Sunday, if I haven't done anything on Saturday, I'll do another slightly longer run, or I'll do what I'm likely to do today, which is a short burst run. Still not necessarily going crazy on the intensity, but slightly up the pace. That's my current routine, which I think is relatively chill. Like, I don't have any competitions coming up, so I'm not stressing about that. I'm not working towards anything necessarily. I'm just focusing on gradual improvement of everything as it goes. How different are we?
I think it's really hard to compare lives. I mean, there's probably a lot more going on for you than you've just said. Like, there's probably loads of other things. I don't think we're that different. I think we're probably mentally both motivated in whatever we're doing. Like, I think maybe I like to push myself massively to the point where I am literally reaching burnout probably every week. And there's some days my friends say to me, like, how are you not ill? How are you not in bed? How are you coping with this? How is your body not broken? So I don't know. I don't want to, like,
what's your routine now in comparison?
Sure. My routine is, God, I try and wake up at like 7 most days. There's some days that I have to wake up earlier to gym, but Mondays, go to work. It's quite an intense day at work, because that's when we do our recordings. So sometimes I'm in the office until about 6:30 and then come home and do my run. Basically, I have to do it in the gym now. If it was summer, I'd still be able to do it, and it would be light outside. But yeah, I do that on the treadmill or bike if I want to. And then that's about an hour and a half. And then that's, to be fair, Monday's pretty chill in comparison to my Tuesdays, which, work, and then straight from work, I go to training, so I genuinely finish at 5:30, and then 5:45 I'm on the train on the way to the track. Then I get there at 6:30, so it's a long commute to get there. And then our sessions just go on and on and on because we have so many elements to it. It's not just people think, oh, you just have a few runs, but it takes about an hour to warm up. You then sometimes have a technical session before that, and then you have your main session, and then you have to cool down, and then I have to get home. So if I've prepped the night before, which sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, I then can get home and then like have a meal ready. But a lot of the time I don't have time to do that, so I am cooking at like bloody 10 o'clock at night. Wednesdays I get up at 6 and gym in the morning before work. I then tend to be in the office, and then I go to Pure Sport in the evenings, which has been a new thing for me, which is really fun. And I've met some cool friends who love running but not in a competitive type spirit, which is nice because they just love running, which is fun because you can just relate to that really. And that's more of like a recovery run for me. So, and then I don't get back home till later on. Thursdays, same as Tuesdays really. And then Friday's day off. And that's when I tend to see my friends in the evening, or actually do something quite chilled, because the next morning, Saturday, is our intense like track or hill session. And yeah, that's when I really need to prep my body for that. And our Saturday sessions are just so long. Like yesterday I left my house at 9, didn't really get back until 4 p.m. Like, I don't know what happens. We do talk a lot, but
it's a social thing. I think that this is it's a massively overlooked thing, that people, when they think about cutting out any form of sport or even picking it up, what you don't consider is the surrounding aspect. So yesterday I did this new thing. It was like CrossFit, High Rocks. I always thought I'd never do CrossFit.
That's so
there
fun.
I was.
Yeah.
The actual workout itself was 35 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I got there about 10 minutes early to the meeting point, and so I was talking to people as they all came in, and it was a lot of people's first time as well, talking to people for about 25 minutes. And then after the workout was done, probably hung around for about an hour and a half. So 2 hours were spent socialising, 35 minutes was spent doing the exercise. And as a result of that, like, for me, it's now obviously a majorly social thing, not necessarily the whole sort of exercise aspect of it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that must be what you're having with your training as well, that there are people there that you spend a lot of time with.
Oh God, yeah, we know everything about each other. Like, it's so funny because, like, I know people that I don't work with, as in my training partners will come to training and be like, Sally from work, I know everything about Sally. Like, we do have a chat, but you have to adapt from that. You have to have like a few minutes of chatting and then get serious.
Stay
and then focus and then chat again. It's like in and out situation. But I don't know what happens on Saturday. We just end up training for so long, and because we have quite technical sessions, and then we have a lot of reps on the track, and then we gym straight after. But we can't, well, I say straight after, we obviously need a bit of recovery time in between, and then train and gym at the track as well. And then I don't get home until it gets dark. And it feels like it. Sometimes you think, oh my God, people on a Saturday, they're going out shopping, they're going to the cinema, they're doing a nice, chilled, whatever, day out with their friends. And then it's hard to explain to people that you don't actually have time for them. Like, just this weekend, my housemate texted me, like, I really want to go and watch the new Hunger Games film. Let's go this weekend. And she's got the whole weekend to do that. And I had to say to her, there's not even like an hour, 2 hour slot I have in my weekend, so I'm really sorry. And it's hard to let people down because you just feel really guilty, but I have to put myself first. My training is going to come before anything. And
I think that's actually, it sounds, when you say it and you sound guilty,
yeah, I do.
And you're saying it because it feels guilty, it feels like it's the unhealthy thing to do, but in reality there are so many people in daily life, in and out of fitness, that don't put themselves first, and ultimately as a result of that cause themselves to suffer because they're trying to please everyone else rather than pleasing themselves first. And then when you get the opportunity to make time for someone else, it's even better.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, I completely understand as well. Like, it is, you do feel guilty. It's natural because you feel like you're making someone else's day worse. But in the long run, it's probably for the best. You get to take care of yourself. You get to be a better person to hang around.
Yeah. And I think it's hard. I'm such a yes man. Like, I will say yes to everything. And I get major FOMO if I'm not there or, not with friends. So I try and fit so many things into my routine that it gets tough. Like, and then I feel even worse if I have to let someone down and be like, oh my God, training's overran. Like today I was late. I'm so sorry.
It's fine. Like, again, I've been there. I've done that numerous times. I'm always behind, and it's always my own doing. And I'd be a liar if I said it was always because of my training. I'm a procrastinator as well.
Yeah, me too.
Because as a person that doesn't give themselves that much opportunity to do things that I feel normal people are doing, when I get an opportunity to, sometimes I'll be like, I've sat on my phone for like 10-15 minutes doing nothing, and I am going to have 5 more minutes, and it's going to make me 5 minutes late, but like, I just want 5 minutes right now. And I think it's still like, it's not good, and every time I do it, I'm like, I shouldn't have done that. But at the same time, it's just natural because that's what's stopping me going too far. It's a difficult thing, and I was wondering, obviously the job that you've gone into now seems like you're having a much more enjoyable time, first and foremost, but the people that you're working with, so you've mentioned the former athletes, the kind of the ones on camera, I don't know if you have many conversations with them about what you're doing, if they know about what you're doing, but do you get any inspiration from the fact that they've obviously done it?
Yeah.
Like, and they've been hyper successful as a result of it.
Yeah. No, I think I look up to them a lot. I really respect them. It's just hard to then explain. I know that everyone knows what sport. If you're in the sporting realm, you know what it's like to train hard and but I think athletics and my event is very, very different. I really respect them because every time we have a guest on, we had Johnny May in on Monday, hilarious bloke, and the boys are like, Jasmine's a 400 meter hurdler, she'll give you a run for your money, so they do respect it. But it's hard because people just have this mindset of what an athlete is in their mind if they don't know it themselves, and they think that you have to be like have amazing nutrition, amazing sleep. And I have to also say to them, like, if I was 100% elite level athlete, what do you think I'm doing here in this office working with you?
Exactly.
Come on.
And I think as well that there's a lot to talent as well. I mean, you're born with talent, and talent shouldn't take away from the amount of work that a person puts in. But people assume when they see someone training outside of work, if they're going to be an athlete, they're an athlete still because of talent.
Yeah.
And in reality, yes, there can be a stroke of talent in there. However, they're still a person.
Mm-hmm.
They have to work their asses off. And I mean, I'm pretty sure, like, when Usain Bolt ran his world record 100 meter time, he smashed a box of chicken nugget.
Yeah.
20 chicken nuggets the like night before or something like that.
Exactly.
Like, these are human beings. Yes, they might be astoundingly quick.
Yeah.
But there's so much work and so much humanity in there as well that just gets overlooked. And this is part of doing this podcast, is talking to people like yourself to expose that, but also show that every single person that sits down in one of these chairs in future is going to have a different story and a different take on it. And you never know, I might sit down with someone that's 100% nutritionally perfect.
Yeah.
Be interesting to see how much further they've got as a result of that.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they kind of are sitting there going, I do wish I had enjoyed McDonald's Monopoly. And I think looking forward from here, obviously you've got yourself back into a job. You're enjoying it. You seem to be comfortable in some training that you're doing at the moment. No longer having to worry about being in London and not sure what's going on anymore.
Yeah.
What is the plan from here?
I think, to be honest, I'm really excited for this season. I think let's go athletics plan first.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a really exciting indoor season coming up. I'm going to do, last year I said to myself, I don't want to do too much because I don't want to get injured indoors and then not be able to race outdoors. But I've worked a lot harder, I think, this season to make sure I'm at that point where my body hopefully will not break. So yes, I am going to do indoors, and I've got quite a few races coming up. And people don't know this as well. They think, 400 meter hurdles indoors. You don't do 400 meter hurdles indoors unless you're a crazy person. I just do 400 flat. And I might do some 60s just to get some speed in. And then outdoors is really exciting. I train hard to make sure that I'm at a good mindset and then physical shape for British Champs. British Champs is my main kind of event of the year. And then we have England Champs, we have the national leagues throughout the year as well. There's 4 of those. So that's my plan for athletics. Work-wise, keep on cracking on. I'm loving it. I'm still very new, but just balancing that and making sure that I'm not slipping back and still managing to train. I think it's hard because there are some points where I've noticed I'm focusing a lot more on my training than work, and there's been other times when I've been working way harder and not getting my training in. It's
work-life balance, and it's a lie if people think that it's a consistent balance.
Yeah.
So you're just aiming to focus on trying to make it more balanced.
Yeah, I think this time last year I just moved to London, so I was socialising so much and I was trying to do way too much, whereas this year I think I've done the socialising I need to, hopefully. Obviously I'll still have nights out and see friends whenever I want to, but I am just going to be a bit more selfish and just focus on myself a lot more because I'm really excited for what's to come, and I don't really know where. I think it's weird because people are like, oh, what's next after British Champs? Surely that's not it. But I think for me, to make it there, I'm happy with that, and I'm content with the fact that I'm making it there. It's a big achievement. It's the biggest competition in the country, in the UK, and I don't think from how much I'm working I'm gonna go any further than that. People again, another comment I get, oh, so you've been to the Olympics? Oh yeah, of course. No, that's not how it works. I wish I could, but I'm not that standard. I'm content with that. I'm happy with that, because otherwise I would have had to make so many other sacrifices. And even my friend who's been to the Olympics, she's still a teacher. You can't. She's still balancing her life. So yeah, I'm really in a good place right now, I think, mentally. Can
I I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, this is a relatively tough question. I'm going to ask you for a message to yourself at 3 different points.
Okay.
If you had to give yourself a message back when you were competing in the high schools sort of competition, what piece of advice would you give yourself back then? From now.
So cliche, I don't really care. I'm going to say, don't worry, everything's going to work out. Don't put so much pressure on yourself now. You'll get older and look back and realise that you have so many more opportunities to prove yourself and shine. Just don't stress. It's all going to be okay.
And would the message change much for yourself in 2020, 2021?
Maybe not. I think it would be more like more of a personal stance in the way that I've had to really learn to love my own company. Like, I was so insecure. I still am. I feel like it's a massive journey when you come out of... I think it plays a massive part to the fact that I was in 3 different relationships from when I was 15 till when I was 23 years old, and I have always had one person who will do everything with me, and I've had to learn being single to like completely enjoy my own company and love myself, and that has played a massive part into like how I am now. So I think the message I would give to myself is like, you can do it by yourself. You don't need someone else to be there for you all the time, and your family are there for you. They're enough. Like, you don't need that other person if they're not contributing to your life. If they're hindering you, what's the point of being? So I think knowing that I can be happy within myself.
Cool. And the last one, you, after you got off that call with the redundancy, what message would you give yourself?
Oh God, that was a tough one, because there was genuinely a point where I was like, oh my goodness. There was one evening, there were obviously a few evenings, but one evening in particular I can very much remember. I had a race, and I hadn't done anything all day, and I was that because I didn't have a job, so I was just focusing on this one race, and it went really badly, and I was waiting to hear back from the job that I have now, from the interview process. And that night I called my mum and I was like, Mum, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I literally was like absolutely rock bottom. And I think I would just say, like, my dad was constantly saying to me, something's going to come. Something big will come. Just wait for them at that moment. I would just say, like, you have to be confident in yourself that you're doing everything you can to be the best that you can be. So I think I would just, again, similar to the first message, like, it is going to work out. That was a horrible evening because if you fail on the track and that's the only thing you're working towards, like, and then you're waiting to hear back from an interview that you don't know if you've got, and you just don't think you've got it, and you put everything into that opportunity, it was really not good.
I think it's from all of those lessons, which are fantastic lessons, and the reason I wanted to ask those is there's going to be people listening to this in each of those stages of life, and they need someone who's been there to give some advice on that. And I think self-reflection on it as well can really tell a lot about yourself and how far you've come. And I think in particular two very, very difficult situations, I think the phrase is stay the course, but I always think of steer the course. Like, you've kept at it, and ultimately being in those tough times teaches you a lot about yourself. Like you said, if you're not doing well at the one thing outside of something else that's also not going well, it's a huge confidence check, ego check, and that's when you start questioning yourself. But then if a big thing does come along and you're where you're at now, and you're now in a much better place, and you look back on that, and like you said, just carry on, keep the focus, you will get through it. And ultimately that's who you are as an athlete now. That is who you are. You line up, and when that gun goes, all of that is now in the DNA of you as an athlete, and that is the thing that's going to take you to the finish line. And without that, who knows, you might have needed an extra 3 months training to be at that performance level, because your brain goes before your body does. If you can keep your brain active and you can keep your brain in it, then the mental strength is what's going to push you over the line and take you to that PB. And in reality, you can't train mental strength. It comes as a result of unfortunate events and bad times. And by adding to one and digging yourself out of it, this is who you are now.
Yeah. And it's so bizarre, because literally that evening I was absolutely rock bottom. The next day I got the email saying I got the job, and it was like someone was listening to me, someone was hearing me, and then from then it's been pretty good. But I didn't think that it would affect me so much as an athlete to not have something else going on in my life, but it really did. So it's weird, some people would be fine with just being an athlete. Like, obviously there are people that do athletics and that's their career and they thrive off that, but I guess I'm not that sort of person. I need something else going on. My brain is constantly working and ticking, so I
think you'd be surprised.
Yeah,
I think like I've said many times, everybody's different, but I think you'd do very well to find an athlete that is just constantly getting stuff out of it and never has battles and never has any of it. And ultimately you see these ridiculous changes in people's performance or even the sport that they do and that sort of thing, and it would be silly to assume that it's just because they felt like it. They felt like getting better. Chances are something dramatic happened in the surrounding scenes, and that's what ultimately fueled it. And especially with the upcoming season, I would be delighted to see you lighting up that gold trigger or green trigger when it's like PB again. And so I'll keep an eye out on your socials to see that happening.
It's mad. Like, you dream of that day to see like the clock stop at the time that you really want, and I know what time I want. I'm not going to say it because
say it.
No,
you've got to speak it into existence.
I don't think I will say it off this podcast, but
okay.
Like, I think it's hard because
and for all of you watching this thinking that I'm going to put it in a box over the top, I'm too nice of a person to actually do that, so I won't.
It's because there's a thing called Power of 10. You probably have heard of it, but you haven't?
I haven't.
Okay.
What is Power of 10?
Power of 10. Wow, it's like the top visited website for every athlete. Basically, that's where all your times go. Everyone can see your time from every single race, whatever you've done throughout every single year, from when you started competing as a kid to now. Like, I have times from, I've got a shot put in there, I've got a javelin throw, like, yeah. So you naturally go on to Power of 10 before a race. You stalk your competitors, you see what times they've ran and how they're running that year, and all everyone's PBs are on there as well. So I think yeah, I'm not going to say, because then, first of all, if I don't make it, but also, like, people will compare what I think my time will be.
Okay, well, what I'll say then is if anyone is stalking you and they get to the point where they're listening to this point, you're so in their head rent free, that you might as well not turn up.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the approach I take. But okay, I get that. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
It's so weird. Like, it's so funny because I try so hard not to stalk people, but I think everyone does. Like, everyone knows.
Well, I mean, so many sports use film and like do film review, and it's not so much stalking, it's mental preparation. Like, if you go into a battle without really knowing what you're coming up against, you're making the work so much harder for yourself.
Yeah.
And it's so much harder to be confident in yourself. Sometimes you need to see that someone's not as good as you to really believe that you are as good as you are. So it's definitely, it's not that case.
Yeah.
But rather than stalking you on, was it Power of 10?
Yeah.
Rather than stalking you on Power of 10, how can people that are listening to this, that are a fan of you, how can they find you?
Instagram I use a lot. I use Instagram all the time. That's just my name, Jasmine Mitchell. And then I don't really use Twitter. I just retweet a load of crap that I find funny. That's cool. My Twitter, or a lot of Formula One shit. And then that's pretty much it. I think Instagram.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tag you in this
Perfect.
And upcoming stuff, and potentially people that are in a similar situation to what you have been in, or whatever, might hit you up and be like, can I have one of those little tidbits of advice that you've given your younger self?
Yeah.
But no, thank you very much for coming on. It's been a pleasure having you and experiencing the studio for the first time.
Yeah, I love it.
And no, it was really beneficial for me to learn a lot more about athletics than I already thought I knew a decent amount, but clearly not. And the way that you're currently training, I think, is also really interesting for people that are also working full-time jobs, or aren't training as well as doing full-time jobs just yet and are wondering how it's done. I think you've given a good example of that, and it's nice to see that you have brought yourself out of a few dark places and you've got yourself into a good place.
Yeah,
so
exactly. Well
well done again for that.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much.
And yeah, feel free, you're a friend of the show, so feel free to ever come back on or do whatever.
Yeah. Could
Awesome.
do a whole podcast on just athletics if you wanted.
I'm down for it. Who knows where this is going? So yeah, if anyone would like to hear that, leave it in the comments. Otherwise, if you can subscribe or follow on Instagram, it's at mindsets_podcast. It's the same on TikTok. On YouTube, you can find it at Mindsets, which is, if any of you are watching, you've done a great job of finding it. And yeah, keep an eye out for the next ones coming forward. But thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
Catch you in the next episode.